when that news did break at the end of 2019, beginning to 2020, that the field had been sold to Granite Products for 1.65 million, there were naturally some disgruntled residents who accused the government of doing a done deal. Really, that the field had already been earmarked for quarrying. The Environment Minister has rebutted that, saying no, that's not the case.
Julian Morell, and you're listening to the Bailiwick Podcast with me, news editor Fiona Potney. Now, the Island Plan is one of the most important documents which will shape the future of how Jersey looks. When a draft of that blueprint for development until 2025 was published last month, naturally the headlines were taken by which sites would be approved for new housing. But there's one huge battle brewing over something that only gets a very small mention: the future of an agricultural field opposite Le Gigoland quarry. 2 years ago, it was sold for 1.65 million to Granite Products, which runs the quarry. At the time, the value of the sale raised eyebrows among islanders. Some wondered if a planning deal had been done behind closed doors. Now the pieces appear to have fallen into place, some say, with the Island Plan now supporting the quarry's expansion. But that's just one fragment of what's become a much larger story, touching on water, waste, building resources, political scrutiny, and even NIMBYism. Reporter Julian Morell has been following the story. Tell us a bit about Le Gigoland. Can you paint a picture of what's there currently and what the surroundings are like?
Well, Le Gigoland opened in 1946. It's been there for a while. It's at the northern end of St Peter's Valley, but it's actually in St Mary. As you drive up towards the end, before the Elms, where the National Trust is based, it's that large site on the right-hand side. It actually is quite deceptive from the road. It doesn't look that big, but actually it does actually punch quite a lot through into the landscape. It's not just a St Mary's issue, because the actual land border of St Mary and St Peter straddles the southern end of the quarry, and also St Lawrence is very close as well. So this does affect 3 parishes, but also a lot of people also say it's clearly a wider island-wide issue as well.
So the proposed bridging island plan is suggesting that Le Gigoland quarry could expand onto a piece of agricultural land in the green zone directly opposite. Why is that necessary?
Well, as it currently stands, Le Gigoland only has around 7 or 8 years of what they call in the island plan winnable extractable reserves. So effectively, if it remained as it was, we've got about 8 years of rock, which primarily goes into creating building aggregate and also concrete block. So it's coming to the end of its life. Obviously, these sort of planning issues do take a long-term view. So the island plan says that if Le Gigoland and its owner Granite Products are allowed to use this field, it would provide at least another 30 years of extractable reserve. So it effectively prolongs the life of the quarry, and also settles some of the question marks over the future of where the island gets its building aggregates from.
For the residents around there, it must already be quite disruptive living next to a quarry. So how have they reacted to this idea that one might be expanded even further?
Well, to take your first point, it is interesting. I have been speaking to residents this week, those who live nearby, and they do say that the blasting, which takes place at lunchtime at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday and Thursday, is surprisingly loud. And I've spoke to 2 residents who live nearby, and they said that their houses do physically shake every time these blasts go on. One resident did actually tell me that he thought his house, quite a grand house, had actually suffered structural damage as a result of the ongoing blasts. However, they both concede that the quarry has been down there longer than they've lived there. So they at pains to stress that they don't want to be seen as NIMBYs. They've lived cheek by jowl next to the quarry for some time. However, they feel that this latest move, which is the island plan suggestion and the support of expanding into this field, does actually cross the line of acceptability.
So we know that obviously there are residents that are quite unhappy about it, but it might not just be them that are having a bit of pushback. We understand that Jersey Water previously had identified that site as a place for a potential future reservoir.
Yes, that's right. Jersey Water say that it would be suitable. Obviously, they face their own challenges with an increasing population, increasing water demand, and also uncertainty in terms of global warming and the preservation of water stocks. They say that an area of the quarry could be dammed, and it could provide an important water source, which would alleviate the need for them to, for instance, increase the height of the quarry at Val de la Mar and flood more of that valley. However, the island plan has considered this and rejected it. So the island plan support, as I mentioned, is for expansion of the quarry and also the development of the quarry as a recycling centre for building waste. So it has already been identified as effectively a waste dump. At the moment, all our inert waste, which is effectively building rubble and non-toxic material, is poured into the reclamation site at La Collette. However, that doesn't have long left, and there isn't another site at the moment which naturally takes that. So Le Gigoland there's a large hole there which will be filled in if the island plan is approved. So there's a number of factors. There's the site as a building site, as a dumping site for inert waste. There is the recycling of that waste to potentially create building sand and other material to be reused in construction. And then there's the continuation of the site with quarrying, which would be based on this field, and I believe there's another field to the north which could also be quarried as well to continue providing aggregate and concrete for Jersey.
So it sounds like there's obviously a lot of moving parts here. It's almost like a game of Tetris trying to decide what could possibly go where. How much discussion or consultation has there been sort of publicly about this so far?
Well, that's the argument of the Environment Minister who sits on top of the island plan process. He can't express his own view because he's ultimately in charge of the appeals process. However, he says that the island plan is an exercise in juggling competing views, in taking on challenges and trying to take a common sense approach. However, residents have been critical of the consultation. The evidence that feeds into the island plan, which supports its view, is based on a minerals waste and water study, to give it its full title, which was produced by produced by consultants, Arup. It was published in December just gone. However, it did arrive very late to the island plan process. Throughout in the lead up to the island plan, various studies which look, for instance, at the Coastal National Park, at flood defences, all these pieces of evidence which are produced by consultants that feed into the process, many of them have actually been highlighted through some positive communications beforehand to say that this piece of evidence has been published. There was nothing like that, as far as I can tell, for this mineral strategy. It just popped up on the Island Plan website saying this is an important piece of evidence, but it wasn't giving any publicity. And in fact, it went up on site, as far as I can tell, at roughly the same time that the island plan itself was published. So residents, and you can understand their grievance, are saying, well, hang on a sec, there's been no consultation about this at all. This popped up in the island plan. This is the first time we've heard of it. And frankly, this isn't good enough.
They're saying obviously they want a bit more debate about it, but in some senses maybe none of this matters. I mean, as we understand it, the field's already been purchased. It was back in late 2019 that it was bought by Granite Products themselves, who run the quarry. So is that not over and done with?
Well, it's not, because a planning application would have to be made, which Granite Products haven't put in order for change of use, because at the moment it's prime agricultural field. However, when that news did break at the end of 2019, beginning to 2020, that the field had been sold to Granite Products for 1.65 million, there were naturally some disgruntled residents who accused the government of of doing a done deal, really, that the field had already been earmarked for quarrying. The Environment Minister has rebutted that, saying no, that's not the case. He couldn't tell me that there hadn't been negotiations or discussions between Granite Products and the government beforehand, because, as I said, he has to stay above the island plan process. There may well have been discussions, you'd expect them in some respects. However, the residents are saying, well, hang on a sec, this is clear evidence of a fait accompli. The government, however, are saying, no, it's not. Please let your views be known to the island plan process, because we are in a consultation process now until the 12th of July. So it's important that the independent planning inspector, who is going to review all the submissions to the island plan, hear your views.
And how can people put their views in?
Well, there are a number of roadshows going on at the moment around the parish halls, with some pop-up displays and planning officers on hand to hear people's views. However, there is actually a formal process, because a lot of it is prescribed in law. So by going online, there is an opportunity to have your say. I think probably the best thing to do for listeners is to just go online and have a look at the island plan pages on gov.je, because there is the process there. I've been told by residents who have tried to go through that process, it is actually quite tricky. But if anyone has time to go to the parish halls and speak to a planning officer, I'm sure it will be explained.
Thank you, Julian Morrell. This is a story we'll continue to follow, and you can find all the latest updates on bailiwickexpress.com. Thanks for listening to the Bailiwick Podcast. You can find all the past episodes under the Listen tab on our website, bailiwickexpress.com, and in all of the usual pod places. The music at the beginning and end was I Shift My Weight by Luno. More next week.